Oh.
Well, scary. I said, oh, I-
Are we being recorded now, Dan?
We are recording. Pocket your own.
Hey, Charlie. Here's Charlie.
You said none of the hour, I said 3.5, right?
If you want to come down here, Charlie.
Like
you're
30.
okay there.
I'm okay if you guys are okay.
You got like 30 minutes.
You know what? I am just fine with 30 minutes. Rick mentioned he's got to leave at 5:30, so let's make that happen. I've got a pretty brief presentation on each of them, just kind of glancing at the subjects. But I mean, as you can tell, it's not a brief packet you have there. Yes.
We've been.
No, and I appreciate all the stuff you put into the packet.
Is there anything in there that you've seen so far that looks different you want to talk about?
Yeah, she said she
So
was.
one question was the short-term rental.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So it says committed all the way across.
So, and I highlighted it just because I know this is something
And
that
there's
one of the commissioners wanted you to look at and reconsider whether or not it should be allowed out west. And that's both in residential zones as well as in the home zone.
Yeah.
And I know that we've already had a discussion, but I wanted to just ask you guys again, just to see if you change your mind. Okay,
They are allowed at 30 days or more.
yeah, great.
That's what I just want to protect the
That's what
housing.
kind of all.
And I just don't think.
So
that's
that's
a
both
place
The
for
two. and then the-
Great.
personally.
Have a room.
That'll you need.
Any other thoughts?
It's.
I will.
I thought we were gonna change that
I'm
1500.
supposed to deny him a sandwich.
We were, but then Commissioner Farrar, we were talking to him about that, and he said, no, I don't want.
But you got that much pull up there?
Yeah. At least 1/3.
Oh.
He just said, you know what, let's have the cutoff be at 15,000 and call it. He didn't want to see any true 3rd acre activities. Back to that, but if you did the street connectivity incentivized, that's where you get the flexibility of going down to 6,000.
So it's still.
Yep.
They're still there.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, Pat was the only one who came in at the 3rd acre, not the 1,000 at first, on the project. And both of those have been looked at by the commission. Proposed at 16,000 or not.
He must have been,
Everybody else. was there.
let's take away the- How much difference did that make on that development?
That's a lot.
Four?
4 months, yeah,
That's nice.
That's what, yeah,
Ask for what you can
the
get.
same
Why not?
one.
yeah.
There's another 600 to 800,000.
And okay, so you said, so part of the dark side is here. It says there. This is what I talked to you about.
Yeah,
But I'm just nervous that this part here is why is this part here?
it's just applicable to the Ogden Valley, so
Oh,
Ogden
okay.
Valley will see it.
But we said it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can recommend it to delete it if you want to, but it's not gonna have because it applies to you.
Cause it's just a little confusing, because you're like violations of what?
Yeah.
But if we can delete it from
Or
ours,
delete
I think I would, but it's just, and then we'll add in whatever we come up with later.
Later, perfect. And
This is what time you eat when you get old.
And well, my friends call me a boomer because we like to eat early too, but not usually at 4:30.
Hi.
Hey, you'll be done by 8 o'clock till midnight.
Okay, one last question, Charlie. I can't seem to find it.
Oh, my.
So maybe it was changed. So we're allowing like pools and parks in all of the zones. But I saw one that was like rec facilities, buildings were not permitted.
I'll have a.
And-
closer look at that one.
And so I would just suggest we make those conditional, because I can see they wouldn't fit everywhere, but I think since those are very resident focused, it would be nice for them to be
Is this public rec
Walkable.
facility or is this,
probably more public, but I think it should be private too. I think even indoor, I mean, if anything we've learned this winter is that recreation needs to happen inside and outside. Or we will have a year with no recreation.
Is that just in the form base? Because I don't see it in the.
That's what I was trying to find. Okay, see, I see. Yeah, park. I saw it at some place, and I don't know if I saw it in the other packet, but I keep looking for it and I'm not seeing it. So the one thing and I think I thought it was in the land use, because I remember saying this should be a conditional use, not permitted use, or thinking that was a good idea,
Mhm.
whatever I thought. But it's nice when kids can walk. And generally the hours aren't bad, but I mean, if you're gonna have school, I don't think it would be different than having school.
Try West Weaver Village first.
Maybe we can let us talk about this one.
Well, it's definitely not something I have specifically intended to do or.
I remember it's. Can't find it next 2 minutes, we're moving on.
Oh, there we go, yeah. It was there.
Form base or form base,
It probably isn't form based.
but it's the only spot I see it so far in the form base. It says it's. Condition, or like the recreational, utility, recreational lodge.
It's what was it? It was,
Was it under commercial uses?
no.
Like, right, there's one here under government uses, public recreation or community center, but it's allowed. It does, well, it gets non-permitted in the larger lots.
What's this one? The,
Government and institutional uses.
oh, public recreation or community, maybe that's what I was looking at.
Permitted.
62.
And then when you get into the,
Oh, there it is, I found it. Yeah, it's that one that I was looking at, recreation or community center owned and operated by a public entity, and so I don't,
if it's owned by a public entity though, can it fall under the government institutional zone? And it doesn't have to be, because this one right here, that G and I zone will kind of trump any other zone, the way I understand it.
How we've done it a lot.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm back to my old computer. Because
You killed the other one?
New computer screen broke. So yeah. This.
yeah, a rec or community center owned and operated by a public.
That'll happen when you throw them.
It was one time.
Yeah, so that was where I thought I would do conditional. Maybe not in the open space, but for everywhere else.
We could do it in the open space area.
I wouldn't mind it, especially if we get the open space at a lower rate and then we can use it for public.
Mhm.
It would get the land cheaper because they wouldn't have a different use for it.
Okay, so that is, what section is that one?
104.22-3. But I think it's covered because it's permitted in the G and I zone, and G and I is gonna trump any other zone.
Yeah. What if the street type isn't designated as GNI? So what if we want it on a specific parcel? Would we just go and change the street type? That makes sense.
That's how I interpreted those type of things.
Yeah.
I mean, government's gonna go and do what they want, where they want, right?
But even, honestly, even if someone came in, a private entity that wanted to do something like that, I think it would fit in a residential zone conditionally, depending on what they were doing. I mean, a small.
But this one specifically says it's owned and operated by a public entity.
Yeah, so I don't see why it would have to be in.
So it wouldn't, in my opinion, that wouldn't play into it. If it's private, it wouldn't, because
Yeah,
it's owned
right.
and operated. It specifically calls it out that way.
All right, permitted across the board.
I would permit or condition, maybe conditional, because what if they're planning something super loud?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
All the post-it notes I have.
See, it's gonna go back.
Okay, so in your motion on this, you'll specifically want to address that, you'll specifically want to address short-term rentals. Actually, did we get short-term rentals for the right way?
We're just, oh, in this one?
In this one, I think we did, it was permitted in the government institutional vehicle or commercial and mixed use commercial, and then everything everywhere else not.
Right, in the form-based code it is, but in the land use.
Ogden Valley is actually changing theirs to follow suit. They're only one of those two types of loans, not really the same thing. Which up there, I mean, I think even the smaller residential should probably be considered like townhomes and stuff like that, but. And move on.
Up there.
Yeah,
But they have zones where it's permitted, don't they have like special zones?
Yeah,
that are permitted?
you, not many.
Well, so many people can fit on that mountain.
Stuff.
You still in dinner in your packet, Steve? Charlie packet?
Anything else? I found it, knew I had it. A little modest or minor changes, I think, in the, as far as the R2 and the R3 goes. We didn't talk at all about R2 and R3. It was just, it came to mind as I was reviewing this, that it didn't make a whole lot of sense to keep creating zones. Maybe we could actually use what we already have. So R2 and R3, just reducing a couple of the, lot development standards. A little bit smaller sizes are allowed for single family residential. Going down to 3,000 square feet, really kind of reflecting what we see over in the ordinance. But it won't affect anything that hasn't been already zoned. And everything that's already been zoned are R2 and R3. Actually, I don't think they're over R3, we have an R2. It's all ready. I don't see it having much effect until we actually create rezone property to that.
Let's go back on the lot size for the R15. So if we go to standard 15 and you use lot averaging, then you're gonna have, as long as it averages, that's still in play, right?
15,000 square feet.
Instead of
Gross.
14.
Yep.
I still don't get that. I'd like it to be either way, or somewhere even, a variable in between. I don't know. I don't see why that.
It's
why
just
that's a big deal.
traditional, the way the realtors have had it for the last 50 years, third acres, 15.
So if you're old, that's good.
Yeah. No, well,
I mean, I know what you're saying, but
engage with partners at one time.
Yeah.
So, we think the same, but I'm for the 14.5, I think Gage trumps us.
yeah, well, I know he does, but I'm trying to figure that.
I like the simplicity of the 15,
I agree.
and we can always incentivize to get it lower, so.
Yeah, we develop an agreement, we could use.
Yeah, but most of these subdivisions aren't gonna be as big as that one of.
Yeah, that'll be 10 acres.
And that's the problem.
7, 5.
Yeah.
There's not much incentive to be had, is what I mean. On Pat's there is, sure. Because that gives them 4 extra building lots. But on some of these, you're talking 10 acres.
But look at like Aunt Sally's. I mean, Aunt Sally's is at 10 acres and they did it and made it work.
Yeah. Well, I know that,
Through the connectivity and through some of the,
it's not that big of a deal, I guess. I'm just trying to figure out why it is a big deal. It shouldn't matter either way.
in my mind, it's 15,000. It just goes, when you look at the zones, especially with the cities and stuff that I've been a part of, R112 is 12,000, R111, R10, 110 is 10,000. RE15 is 15,000.
Just clarity.
That's just in my mind how it's always worked.
I agree with Andrew, though. Like, I have a hard time doing something just because that's what we've always done.
Yeah.
There's a reason of why it is, just because we've always done that.
Well,
And that's not why I'm fighting it though.
Right, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, what difference does it make? I mean, if you can do the math, you can do the math. Everybody has something that they can do math on if they can.
That's before we had calculator.
Yeah, well,
Zeros were necessary.
Honestly, probably why.
But it might, as far as clarity goes, it is a small difference. It makes a big difference to developers. But the numbers are arbitrary to begin with. It's not, set in stone one way or another. And in general, like Ogden City, you're saying that's what people are used to. They see 15,000, they expect it. And then to write the code really convoluted with this, like we were just trying to figure it out, the 15 flex, I think as a form of communication, that's where it has its value, is that it really muddies the water for people. The standard, it's not just here, it's kind of a nationwide thing.
I'm comfortable going Whichever way you guys want to.
Well, no, we know which way it's gonna go.
We might as well just,
The point is put it new, but, you know.
I can, tell the commission that you guys feel passionately about it if you want, one way or the other. So we can just stick with what it is and,
I would say go R14 if you're gonna go smaller.
Yeah.
Cause then it's clear.
Well, but it
It's an odd one, but at least it's
it
clear.
kind of circles back to what you said. It still, it provides some room for incentivizing too.
Well, that was 15th, was just to see what the public kind of thought. You know, in their mind, they might have been thinking 3rd acres too.
well, in my mind, 3rd acre, 15,000.
Like too. But like
Same thing.
14, 15, 520 there.
Yeah. On a big development, like you said, it makes, what, 4 lots on 40 acres? Eventually.
And I'm okay with it either way. I think you'll have less battles and fight out west if it stays at 15.
Probably.
any concerns with the street regulating plan?
In the form base.
Okay, the map itself, you guys have probably noticed, I shrunk the green space or the open space down to match what, Mr. Blanche had proposed. But apparently that is off the table right now, so the county commission is not gonna be considering that one at all. And so if you want to,
Why? I'm just curious.
it's actually other issues unrelated to that specific problem. They need to help motivate the applicant to get some of this other stuff done.
Get your first developments taken care of before we move forward on more.
And the county's on a little bit, owed a little bit.
That's probably not legal.
Anything's legal when he owes the county the kind of money he does for 3,600
Oh,
from 3
okay.
years ago.
I didn't know that part. Maybe we shouldn't be talking about that.
Probably not.
I'll talk about it to anybody that wants to hear about it, because it's BS that it hasn't been enforced. I think.
Think if they knew your way around,
Probably
it,
should
that'd
have been
become a
enforced.
civil deal rather than a zone.
So I don't know,
Okay,
I'm kind of thinking maybe resurrect it back to the size that it is on the general plan. It's shown as almost 20 acres there. If you want to see it that way, or we can keep it as it's drawn down, just 5 acre park.
Well, it doesn't go that way, does it though, Charlie?
Which direction?
Because it shows in the, doesn't the part go this way, not this way?
It goes,
Or am I looking at it? Oh, I'm looking at it wrong.
it's longer east to west. Yeah. On the general plan, it shows longer.
Going the other way.
North, south, and
Right.
much more.
That's why I'm looking at it.
So then has the zoning that was provided to him by the planning commission, which I'm not sure where that went as far as the commission goes. I'm presuming nowhere.
Yeah, right.
Okay, okay.
And I shouldn't say that, it's on hold. I don't
It
know.
just never went to them, right?
Yeah,
Went before 'em.
they don't want to hear it.
So we're in a holding pattern and there's no action for us to take.
Right.
Other than form based.
The good thing about it is now the code's there, so if we brings it back again, hopefully it can just go through with the code, not with the
Yeah, apply for-
rezone, right?
Well, but the rezone he has is still valid, or does it go
Yeah.
over?
Oh, it's
to
still
the-
valid.
The
If
planning
it goes
commission
to the county
approval pending.
for,
Right,
Yeah. But that's on hold.
that's on hold,
I
yeah,
don't know if it's
yeah.
planning on using
But if
that.
he was to stop and start over again,
He
then it
could
would
just
go to this.
Because he wouldn't have to rezone it right now that this, once this is
No,
adopted.
still
place.
needs to rezone.
Oh, he would still have to rezone it to fit in this.
You wouldn't need a development agreement.
Oh, well, that's what it is. That's right. These things just.
Because its specificity is out.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're necessarily in a holding pattern. If this gets adopted, you don't need a development agreement or anything like that particular project. Just follow the form-based code. We give them a rezone, just say form-based code governs.
The question is, do we want 5 acres or 20 acres
Of the park.
of park
On the-
on the plat? or on the plan?
Or somewhere.
How do we
in
get
between
it 20?
acres.
Just put
What's
it on
that?
there.
You just color it 20 or you color it green. Now, here's the deal. If he doesn't want to do a park, or we ask for more than.
That's right, because the old one
What
took
would
it
give him motivation to do.
basically all.
Is he could always just develop under the 1 acre
Zone.
zone. And so the alternative might not be as great, so do you want 5 acre park with maybe some other uses next door, or do you want 1 unit every acre out there on the zone that he currently has? Which if you filed an application for that, you'd be entitled to approval. Discretion.
To go 1 acre.
Well, he'd get a lot less.
He would get a lot less, yeah.
So we won't do that.
I don't know, if the commission won't take any action on the legislative decision on the rezone, that may be his only option. Assuming that there's not any legal issues with him submitting an application for
To do that.
that.
So it can't even, curiosity question, they can't even be forced to go to the commission for denial or acceptance?
It can, the commission just has said, we don't want to talk about this until we've been compensated.
The legal department said that that's legal because this is a legislative item. If it was administrative, we could.
I said we put the park back the way it was then.
The 19 acres, I say too. I think
But
that's
he
more-
still has the option that he can, because if he puts that, then it becomes TDR and he could sell 19 TDRs essentially off of it, right?
Yep, as long as we write that in the TDR component. Now, right now, I think the TDR, oh, you're right, because it's still A1. So if you look at the TDR component of it, you would still be able to sell developments off that.
At 19 acres, so that's 1 unit per acre, so that's the 19 units. essentially.
So the park would go.
Ready to go?
from
Because originally.
South.
So it was originally all
Oh, that.
But yeah, that was,
Basically,
or did it come all the way down to 900?
it came down to the, and I would suggest we allow for certain kinds of uses on 900.
On the corner, I'm fine with holding it back like the map says, but take it all the way to the north to the canal.
Also hold it back.
Yeah, so-
Have it in right.
I mean, it makes sense on that corner. It's kind of a hub in our commercial
Between
zone.
850 South and the canal.
In mind, that's my thoughts of it.
Cool. Well, half an hour, let's see if you guys can do it.
Let's see if you can do it.
Oh, it's 46.
You're gonna pull this cart in.
Just this, do you mind? Rather than that.
Got enough hands, John?
Never. Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. I've had my share of falls. No, you can hang on to it. No, I got another one. You're welcome to it.
Apparently they all need to walk.
Thank you, Andrew.
Made it?
Yes. Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Would you? Mind making sure the commissioner will get one of these? Yeah.
No, Wayne, no, Wayne, go.
Where am I trying to sponge somewhere?
Just in case I forget one. It's
You know, I had extra bags, so I am always ready.
Oh, how can the changes got? Ogden Valley. I said we pulled that whole section out.
Which one's identifying it?
Down there, I got. What do we got here?
Oh, we'll be, because we already haven't had enough already.
You already approved the whole one.
Yeah, and then Ogden Valley.
Here, Bill, I'll give you.
From my understanding, we.
All of them.
Take that whole section right there, I'd be, yeah, let's just don't. We don't have to take the D. Keep it simple. Because the core is basically the part was. Yeah, but they're. Yes.
Nobody's.
All we really need. I see. They're from the valley. Oh, sorry. All we need, yeah. You know. How do we either way? You don't need to call it. And because you know, that's not. Think of it this way, you know, the same thing. Think of it this way. Yeah. We just, you went, it was kind of the same thing. Warning. Or it's okay with this, but the valid, the limits, we know what has to do. They gotta define it a little better because they're not. That makes sense. Well, there's a part up there that's slow, and then there's the part up there that apparently feel like it's all up being. Or it just doesn't exist, right? Exactly. Very good. Well, you know. I think they're trying to get people there. Anyway.
I don't know everything.
Well, we had something.
It's, you want to do this stuff.
You have to print. Okay. No, yeah, that's where I was directing you this in a second. No, on page 10.
No, that's.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And you're just
changes.
Yeah, and then.
Oh, yeah. You go. Okay. All right. Got it. Technically, pulling screens out there. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I'd like to call the, hold on. Are we cool? We good to go? Okay. All right, I'd like to call the meeting of the Western Legal Planning Commission. It is April 11th. All members are present tonight except for Commissioner Andrew. Go ahead and stand. Keep pledging. Allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation. Okay, thank you for that. June provided us with our minute from our meeting last month.
Good to me as well.
Motion to approve.
Motion.
A motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Passes. Thank you. Okay, first item on our agenda is going to be a legislative item 3.1 ZTA 2022-07. This is going to be a public hearing and action on application to amend the Weber County Land Use Code to help implement the new Western Weber General Plan. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, June. Moving right along, I jumped right past it. Since we skipped number 2, we're going to jump back up to that. So our rules of order. This has kind of been passed back and forth through, we had adopted it at our last meeting, but Ogden Valley had some issues from my understanding. Liam, is this you?
Yeah, it can be. It's really section 4 that you have to look at. Ogden Valley wanted to include some, I guess, hypotheticals of what could constitute a perceived conflict there. It doesn't change the substance of what is provided. The addition is not either necessary or required. I mean, it's just if you want it in there. It really doesn't do anything to the substance of the matter.
I think doesn't need to be there, but that's my opinion. Commissioners, any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, well then I will entertain a motion on how you guys feel.
So moved. I guess.
You, sorry.
Okay. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the rules of order for Weber County Planning Commission based on what's been presented to us in this meeting.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yep. I've got a motion. Do I got a second? Second. A motion, a second. Roll call on this one, Commissioner Clontz,
Yay.
Commissioner Neville,
Yay.
Commissioner Wicker,
Hi.
Commissioner Favero,
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick. Aye. Chair votes no. I don't think it needs to be there. That can go on the record. Even though Ogden Valley needs definitions and hypotheticals. So that passes 5-1. Thank you. All right, now we can go on to item number 3.1. ZTA 2022-07, a public hearing and action on an application to amend the Weber County Land Use Code to help implement the new Weber County General Plan. Director Grover.
Legislative type, staff is initiating this. You'll just need to open and close the public hearing, and you're just forwarding a recommendation to the county commission.
Awesome. Thank you, Director Grover. Mr. Charlie.
You guys see what's on the screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, commissioners, thank you. You guys aren't any strangers to anything that's in this packet or report. I'm going to go through the items just with a brief overview and let you guys take the action you want or ask questions or whatever. We do need to have a public hearing, has been noticed as a public hearing, both items have been. But we'll dive right in. This is intended to implement key parts of the Western Weaver General Plan. It affects a lot of different ordinances, but in substance, it's really not a lot of detail that we haven't already discussed over the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, I would suppose. So I'm just going to kind of pick off the points. I've consolidated all the points into maybe an umbrella of 4 or 5 different items. So rezone procedures, we're just amending specific submittal requirements. I'm requiring a conceptual street connectivity plan, pedestrian connectivity plan, as well as a parks and open space plan. Now, that doesn't mean that the streets that are on those conceptual plans have to be implemented unless we implement them by development agreement. If our new zones work the way that we hope that they'll work, including incentivizing street connectivity, maybe we won't even need to use those concept plans. But we do want to see where a developer might say a street connection should go versus where those of us sitting behind a desk might see it go. We might get better ideas from the development community on street connectivity, as well as open space. We are going to come back and talk about parks in a different revision. And so you'll see that at another time, but we do want to see what the developer wants to propose with their rezones as far as parks and open space goes. And then creating optional submittal requirements, meaning the planning director, the planning commission, or the county commission can say, you know what, we can't make a decision unless you give us X, Y, and Z. And at that point, everything kind of gets paused. Developer goes and gets those X, Y, and Z, submits them, and gives better information to help you guys make a decision. Okay, we get into the residential zones, and I know we've talked a lot about creating like a R15 flex. We've talked about a new R15, a new maybe revisions to the R12, R10. And as I got looking at the code and looking at just the framework of the code, I realized we've already got R1 zones. We just don't list them as R1 zones. We list them as R-1- whatever the minimum lot size is. And so we're just resurrecting the old R1, which the county did have when we first adopted zoning. And then we stratified it out into different zoning types sometime after we adopted it. So resurrecting the old R1 category, and then you've got zones within that category, which would be the R110, R112, and R115. And then the R2 and R3 zones, you've already got those in your code. We're removing them from the chapters that they're in respectively and moving them all into one chapter. These are your residential zones. That doesn't mean that residential is not allowed in other zones. It just means that from a residential perspective, R1 single family, R2 two family, R3 multiple family. And there's a jump in there between R2 and R3 because actually multifamily is more than 4. So our code actually has 3 family and 4 family building types, but all of those are consolidated into the multifamily. In the R1, we're looking at flexible lot development standards. So the R1, 15, 12, and 10, we're reducing lot development standards on all of those setback standards, both side, the front. The area we're keeping the same, so 15,000, 12,000, 10,000 as a standard, but we are allowing for some flexibility to be built in to a tool that we've already created, which is the connectivity incentivized subdivision. And so if somebody comes in and says, I volunteer to do connectivity incentivized, I want to make sure it's very clear it is a voluntary thing. I think I wrote that probably 5 different ways in that code, just to make sure if a developer's reading it, they know that they're not entitled. They are opting in, and if they don't get what they want out of it, so be it. They can go back and do a different kind of subdivision review with a different kind of product. So this does build in some discretionary decision-making in what would otherwise be an administrative decision. So it's a little bit of a hybrid decision, but because we've made it very clear on the record up front that there is discretion here, we've put everyone on notice that they don't have to go this route. They can go a different, okay? So that's connectivity incentivized. It does require the applicant to work with the planners, the planning commission, to align streets where the streets should be, where we think they should go. It allows the applicant to propose them, and then we'll help them make some shifts and adjustments. The whole focus of that, as you guys know, is to provide streets that essentially point in a consistent direction, are efficient to use. We're emphasizing transportation connections over lots. And so in exchange for that, you might get some weird corners of a subdivision that wouldn't otherwise be developable to the maximum potential if you just stuck with the standard 15,000, 12,000 or 10,000 square foot lot size. And so we're allowing the developer to kind of mix that up and get some smaller lots. Streets and lot access. There's quite a bit in there about streets and lot access. So we get in and we kind of refine what is an arterial street versus what is a collector street. Our code previously called them minor collectors and major streets. And so we just want to make it reflect what our general plan shows and what best practice is. We also are putting in their limits on lots that access those streets. And I know we've discussed this hypothetically, but we didn't look at this in detail. And so lots that front those streets, I know from an engineering perspective, from a transportation efficiency perspective, you don't want driveway after driveway after driveway, especially if those driveways are one every 60 feet. You want to see a little bit more efficiency in those roads and having spacing. UDOT has spacing requirements on their roads. Theirs are much more because they're dealing with the arterial streets. But we have some limitations here. Primarily, we're saying don't access your lots off of that street. Build another street and access the other direction. But in some cases, that's not going to be possible, and so we do provide some exceptions to that. We're creating new shared private lane, but it's going to be very limited for Western Weber. No longer than 200 feet, no more than 7 homes on it, and it cannot be used if it's circumventing a street connectivity rule. We readdressed alleyways. Some of the reduced lot sizes, we're going to see some rear load lots because we are saying you can only go this narrow and you can only have this amount of front setback as long as your vehicle access to those lots are coming on the rear or the side by means of. So we wanted to make sure we beefed that up. Snow storage, width, operations and maintenance of alleyways. We wanted to make sure it's very clear what we meant by all of those. We already have a definition for alley, and it is defined as a public thoroughfare. And so we're probably looking at requiring these areas, these alleys, to be dedicated to the county. However, working with Liam on this, we wanted to make sure it was clear, put a note on the plat, put a restriction on the lots, whatever it is that tells the lot owners, they're the ones moving the snow, they're the ones doing the maintenance on that, not the county, even though it is a public thoroughfare. Landlocked lots. So you guys know, and in fact, Ogden Valley probably knows it a little bit better, that we've had quite a few subdivisions and development requests to gain access to lots by some means other than a street, because the lots were landlocked. Essentially, the way that they were going to divide them out, they're creating landlocked lots. And one of the things that our subdivision code has currently is something that we've called alternative access. And we've been very liberal in the way that we've allowed alternative access, primarily because the way it's written isn't very restrictive and it's a little ambiguous. And so Ty goes in favor of the guy asking for it. We're taking that out. We're taking that out. We are putting some very clear standards on how to access a landlocked lot as long as it is landlocked already. If you're making a new subdivision, it's very clear in the code that you have to provide a street, shared private lane, or otherwise that gets to that, that gets access to that. Flag lot, sorry, that's what I meant by flag lot. Okay. Still streets and lot access. So changing allowances for deferral agreements, that section of code is very obscure, ambiguous. It actually, the way it reads makes it look like we will accept no curb, gutter, and sidewalk in the Ogden Valley. We're only going to do deferral agreements up there. I don't know when the end of that was supposed to be. I think what it meant to say was deferral agreement is mandatory if we don't do curb, gutter, and sidewalk in the valley. Out west, it isn't that specific. Changed it. It now says deferral agreements are only allowed if it doesn't make sense for drainage, for connectivity, for whatever, to put those facilities. Otherwise, they've got to. And then also in that section, we added in driveway aprons with curb gutter and sidewalk. So the developer, if the lots are less than 60 feet wide, and this was a request from our engineering division, if for lots that are less than 60 feet wide, the developer is responsible for building those aprons, not the future landowner. And that's because 60 feet wide and less, you got limited area where you could put that driveway. And so when you've got those driveways accessing the roadway that in that level of frequency, the engineers want to have a level of control over seeing the design of that. If it's wide, if the lots are wider than 60, it would be. Changing flag lot requirements. This is straight out of the general plan. I know we kind of brushed on it a couple of times. I don't know if we actually looked at it in detail. General plan says change the standards to require half of what the zone would otherwise require. And that's not half of street connectivity lots, 6,000 square feet. It's half of what the zone actually is. So in the new R115 zone, it would be half of, or excuse me, I'm saying half, double, sorry, twice. So in the R115, you would need 30,000 square feet to, in order to get a flag lot. Making sure the flag stem that leads to the lot is at least 60 feet wide. So if we need to put a road in there, or somebody else who's landlocked behind wants to put a road in to get access to their property, they could potentially do so. We would have a easement that runs along that stem as well that gives the county the opportunity to create that road if it's ever. Stream corridor setbacks. This was actually a pretty easy one. General plan says bump it from 100 feet to 300 feet. So that was a pretty simple deal. In the stream corridor setback, you'll also see we added just a little bit of clarifying language. It says that the exception to that rule of not being able to build a road in the stream corridor setback is if you are building a bridge or have a stream alteration permit from the Army Corps. Doesn't say anything about allowing a road. So you're building a bridge without a road that goes to it. That just seems kind of silly. So I just added in there and a roadway as long as that roadway hits that stream corridor at about a 90-degree angle. In other words, don't run along the stream corridor in the corridor and then cross. Stay outside of the corridor until that crossing happens is how that's supposed to be interpreted. As far as outdoor lighting goes, I pulled most of the stuff that we were looking at for Western Weber out and just made a couple of clarifications for the Ogden Valley. For when they look at this at the end of the month, we will come back and talk about outdoor lighting. So there's quite a bit of reorganization going on in there that doesn't actually change the substance of the ordinance. I didn't do the huge overhaul of the supplemental regulations chapter. You guys will probably see that, but I did take the easy ones that were easy to consolidate, like solar energy and right-of-way limitations and clump those together. Looks like it's a lot of new stuff. It's not. It's just moving them together. I'll continue to do that as we continue to go through and implement more parts of the Western Weber General. And then phase 2 of implementation, we'll be talking a little bit more about outdoor lighting, signage, park donation requirements, rural residential versus agricultural, water conservation, and more, but none of that is provided in this section, or proposal. Some things to think about, really simple. Is it compatible with the general plan? Does it help the community execute its vision? Is the timing correct? And I just copied and pasted screen clips straight out of the general plan into your staff report, so you can just have a refresher on how each of these are addressed in the plan. I also, in your staff report, provided a model motion. Hopefully that is helpful to you guys in making a motion. I provided you 3 or 4 different model motions, one for recommendation of approval as is, one for recommendation for approval with modifications that you guys may want, a motion to table, and a motion to recommend. And so feel free to make any one of those motions if you don't have any questions for me after the.
Questions for Charlie? Seeing none. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
All right, I will entertain a motion to open up a public hearing on this item.
So moved.
Wait a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are now in public hearing for this item. Anybody from the public want to come up and speak on this?
Pat Burns, 1407 North Mountain Road. I don't want to talk about this one, talk about other subdivision, just kidding. The only question I had, Charlie, because I've done several flag lots. You said you want a 60-foot right of way or 30-foot right of way? Okay, just because on a flag lot, normally we do the flag lot, it's a 30-foot. Then the other person can do 30. And the only reason is sometimes 60-foot lot wouldn't work, especially in R15. So just a question. Thank you.
Roger Heslop, 1657 South, 4700 West Ogden. The question that I have deals with your river and stream corridor setbacks. On page 42, line 1346. They're asking for 300 feet on both sides of the Weber River at the high water mark of the river. As a property owner along the river, I mean, that's giving up quite a bit of land. If you have any footage that borders the river at all, and I thought it was bad when we had the 100-foot in the original zoning, but now all of a sudden 300 is appearing, and I'd like to know the rationale and reasoning for that.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing.
A second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Now we're at a public hearing. First one, Charlie, you want to address Mr. Burns's question or clarification on the flag lots?
Yeah, actually, he stated it. So it is 60 feet if it's a single flag lot. If it's two flag lots right next to each other, it's 30 for a total of 60. And we would hope that it would be the latter. But if it's a single flag lot, we would make sure we could potentially get that road.
Charlie, question for you. So generally a road is not possible. Well, I guess, so when you're out in Western Weber and someone's developing and May just doesn't own the property next to them, that makes sense because you eventually do want that road to go through. But when you went to Highlands, those flag lots won't be possible and we won't be able to utilize the land like I think we were hoping to do to fit a couple more houses up there. Do we, I thought we talked about maybe some sort of an exception in the Uinta Highlands, or
We probably did. And I have to go back into the proposal to see what it addressed. We do have in the proposal already exceptions to completing street blocks. And that's essentially if it's already built out or if there's topographic constraints. And so if it's not in there, I could certainly put that in there for flag lots as well.
oh yeah, for flag lots, just with geographical, or if it's all built out, I think that would help utilize the Uinta Highlands a little better. It probably won't build a ton of houses, but maybe help.
Okay.
Yeah, an infill
That's it.
option,
That's right.
exactly.
Perfect. And the other question, did you want me to address that?
Yeah, the 300, I mean, my understanding of that's basically was overwhelming what people wanted out of the general plan meetings and when the general plan comes through, right?
Yeah, a riparian corridor that's very wide down in there. Now, I certainly feel for any landowner who has land along the waterway outside of the floodplain, because that would affect them. However, if we're looking at street connectivity incentivize or lot averaging, that area could potentially be included in that calculation. So you wouldn't lose density. You would just have either much deeper backyards, or you would hopefully what it does is it allows the park district to actually purchase just a ton of riparian area, creating a linear park all the way along that riverway, which there wouldn't be a lot of value in building along it if there's that restriction to essentially not build there.
So 300 feet on beyond the floodplain,
No, the high water mark.
At
high water.
the normal high water.
Okay,
right.
the normal high water mark.
That's right.
Which may be a totally new definition this year.
Well, I think you're gonna see the floodplain come into play this year, but that's my thoughts. I mean, a lot of that. Why do we want to build in those areas? Because they're prone to flood within that 300 feet anyways.
That's right.
So,
Most areas I think are affected by
well, not all,
floodplain,
but
but there are some areas where that floodplain is pretty close to inside the banks of that riverway.
Would those areas require a lot of maintenance, though? I think that might be Mr. Heslop's concern is that that they might be too much to manage to own publicly, and that we'd rather see them privately held.
They may, yes, and they still could be privately held. So the corridor setback isn't intended to be as a
Not
requirement to transfer land. It's
Oh.
just no roads or buildings.
no roads or
along
buildings.
there.
Okay.
So you
sorry.
might see some very.
You
deep
said that, now I'm
backyards.
getting it. Okay.
How did you come up with it?
You want to ask me about a year ago? So it was part of the general plan, and I think it was just, we were debating a few different numbers, I think, 100 not being enough. I want to say we talked about 500 being too much, and then 1,000 foot swath. And we were looking at examples like the Jordan River corridor, which there's a whole governmental entity that is tasked with taxing and buying property all the way along that. So they're doing it a little bit differently than just doing setback, but it was just the number we landed on as the planning commission for the general plan.
it falls into suit like what's done through Riverdale from like Parker Drive on up to Riverdale Road through that corridor, the river and the trail. That's how, I mean, I actually think theirs is closer to 400. If I remember right, what theirs is through that corridor, other than the brine insurance place, which was in there long before, but I think it, kind of preserves that area.
Is there any exceptions to that, Charlie?
There are a few exceptions, excuse me, but not many.
I'm just
So-
trying to visualize, because I'm thinking like Ogden area, right, where there's restaurants and other businesses that are right close to the river, and that's why they do well, is because of that and close to the trail system. So
Yep, right.
they're
Right now, that wouldn't, those kind of things wouldn't be exceptions. So exceptions are for essentially bridges that cross the river. There's a handful of other exceptions. You flip back to it, but it's not, it wouldn't be for like commercial businesses or anything like that. Okay, let me
42, page 42, I believe, right?
47.
So under exceptions, you got bridges, trails, the entire Ogden River below Pine View. Those are the three exceptions. That doesn't mean that those exceptions can't be resurrected, or, it doesn't mean we can't create new exceptions, or we can't create development agreements that allow for some differences to happen in those cases. And if you guys would like, maybe it's not the right time to talk about this specific section. We can always bring it up at another time after we've had more discussion. I figure it was low hanging fruit, but if it's not, maybe we wait until we can find that tree a little more.
I think I'm good with the way it's in here.
Just don't want it to prevent us from smart growth, right? Doing things that we want to do that would attract people to be there. So
yeah.
I see that it could be a concern.
But I think that's where the development agreements can come into play, right, Charlie?
That's right. For example, one of the things we're negotiating with the Black Pine development, where they've got a very specific width of their property between a road and river. They like the 300-foot buffer, but they have a couple of spots that they're going to have a hard time meeting that 300 foot. So through a development agreement, we've negotiated 300-foot average. So they'll be providing quite a bit of green space along that riverway with a couple of sections. So that's kind of how we've addressed that.
So basically the way it's wrote, if this is adopted, it could be approved. They wouldn't have to come in with no changes. They could just accept it the way it is, or come in through the development agreement process and then certain cases like, if it's a restaurant or something, then we can look at it on a case by case basis, right?
Have to look at it through a development agreement or amend the text.
Perfect.
Any other questions for me?
Commissioners, anything else for Charlie?
Just a question, how to put the amendment into the motion for the flag lots. How do you suggest we do that?
We can always, so what I have here I have here to, so for flag lots, if a road cannot be created, then give exceptions. Maybe even better, we could just say something like, provide the same exceptions for flag lots that you do for street connectivity in the street connectivity section. Okay. So we could do something as easy as that, and I can go in. If you give me a little bit of liberty, I can go in and make the changes. Or if you want to sit here and make the changes verbatim right now, we can certainly could do that too.
And is that the section 108-729, access and standards for the landlocked residential lot or parcel?
No, that is. It's in the subdivision code. It's under street connectivity.
So would this supersede this section here, the landlocked, would that supersede the flag lot? Do we really need to make that?
No, so it would be both. So when a developer is going to do a subdivision, if there's already a landlocked parcel and it's already legal to build on that landlocked parcel, that's where the landlocked provision would come in. If it's not already a landlocked parcel, we wouldn't allow the developer to create a parcel that is landlocked. That's when they would create the flag lot. So they'd have to use some of their area to create the flag stem that ties that lot back to a street or lane.
So in the situations up in the Highlands, if they're only buying like one parcel of land, then
And-
it would fall under this access standards for landlocked
Yes.
residential lot.
One parcel that doesn't already have frontage on a street, that would fall under the landlocked parcel.
So maybe, but if they want to do more than one is what you're
If they wanted to subdivide, yeah. Now, maybe if they're doing more than one and they're allowed to do more than one under the code, then this landlocked would come into play under those circumstances.
So maybe we don't need to make any adjustments because it would fall under the landlock rules and not the flag lot rules.
Yeah, so what I heard was maybe that flag stem isn't always going to be needed because there's nothing on the other side of it. It's all built out or it's a cliff or something like that. And so the flag lot would still be required, but having a 60-foot wide stem maybe isn't necessary in those cases because we know that there's not going to need to be a street to go through.
But the requirements for landlocked only says 24 feet.
Yeah. So, sorry. See if I can clarify a little bit. So the landlocked only, if it's currently landlocked and somebody comes in to subdivide the land or whatever it is, then it is what it is, unless they're going to be buying the side of somebody else's lot in front of them to get access. So it is landlocked. We'd probably allow them to use the landlocked provisions in those cases.
Okay.
However, if it's not landlocked, or if there's the ability for the developer to make it not landlocked because they own other property, we would make them do the flag lot at that point. So this should be, the landlocked provision should be the very last resort if there's no other way to gain access.
And I think this gives enough for, you went to Highlands, I think this gives enough.
But after that,
Yeah, because I think most of them would fall under totally landlocked and then they only have 24 feet. There aren't big swaths of like 10 acres anywhere. So,
yeah, I think you're right.
okay, then we don't, I'm okay not changing that flag lot provision.
I'll still take a look just in case and between here and the county commission, just to see if there's any tweaks that we could make to
Okay,
kind of alleviate the situation.
awesome, thank you.
No problem.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Chris?
I was wondering if there was gonna be a follow-up to that. Yeah, but I think we're out of public hearing now.
Oh, but we did already clarify that, so for one flag lot, you need 60 feet. For two flag lots, you need 30 and 30. So we just need to make sure that if it's not landlocked, that it does have to be accessible. But if it is landlocked, no matter where it is, then they have the provisions in the landlocked.
So does that still go back to what you said, Charlie? It's the same exception as for road connectivity? Or not, I suppose.
A little warm. Yeah, so it would be the same kind of exception that I would write in there. And I think it's a good idea if it's not already there. I was trying to find the flag lot provisions here. Because I thought I had addressed that in some way. Here, let's just take a look real quick.
Material collector. Shared private liens.
The 10622-030.
Page 32, part E.
Oh, access. Each flag should.
You know, we did put an exception in there, but it's for the Ogden Valley. So E3E, a flag lot shall not be used to circumvent the street connectivity or street block standards of this land use code. However, in the Ogden Valley, if it is determined by the planning director that development to which a future street could serve access on adjoining property is not likely within the next 10 years, the flag lot may be platted as long as an easement is platted over the entirety of the access strip in favor of the county for the purpose of creating a public street at the time the governing body determines a public street is necessary if ever. So what I think we should do is get into that paragraph there and add a couple of exceptions to that. Because we do that for street connectivity. If the street is going to serve no purpose because it's entirely platted around, there's no reason to have it. And so just put that little exception.
So possible for us to approve the rest of the document and just pull that one section.
Well, you could do that, or you could just have Charlie, give Charlie the ability to make the modification between the two meetings. We just have to specify it in our motion how we wanted it. It could go either way, pull that section, or I think it would be in the best interest just to allow Charlie to put the exceptions in there. We can just specify it through stating that section.
Sorry, section. Yeah, so section 106-2-4.010 lot standards generally. And it's subsection E3E or E3.
Okay. All right, anything else for staff?
Thank you.
Commissioners, any discussion? There's been a lot of time put into this and a lot of work sessions to get it to where we are. Finally, to this point, a lot of hours by Charlie fixing old code and making it a little more, hopefully easier to interpret and read through. So. Okay, if nothing, I'll entertain a motion on this, commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we move positive recommendation to the county commissioner, to the county commission for file ZTA 2022-07 as is stated in our packet. And we'll use the model motion, the second model motion, which explains an example to remove, and this is what I'm going to put into my motion, the removal of short-term rentals as a permitted use. And then items 2 through 5, let's see. No, excuse me. I'll use the same findings that are used as examples. And there is one item I would like to add as item number 2, which is to have planning, i.e. Charlie, fix section 106-2-4.010, item E3E, to provide the same exception for flag lots as road connectivity. And please help me here if anyone has any comments or questions about that part of the motion for sure.
Can I add one clarification?
Please.
Just the just the
Commercial.
residential uses. It's showing it as permitted in all of the zones. We'd like to see the not permitted. And it's on page 14 of our pack.
Right. Oh, okay. So that,
Fine.
that just clarifies your first. item. Okay,
Just make
very
sure they
good.
know where to find.
Okay, yes, perfect. Okay. Okay, all right. I have a motion. Do I have a second? A motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner McCormick?
Aye.
Commissioner Favero? Aye. Commissioner Wickern?
Aye.
Commissioner Neville?
Aye.
Commissioner Clance?
Yay.
Chair votes aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you. And yay. Okay. Item 3.2, this is ZTA 2022-06. This will be a public hearing and action on an application to amend the form-based zone for the Weber County Land Use Code to implement a West Weber Village Street Regulating Plan. Since Director Grover's gone, Steve, do you want to lead into this one?
Charlie can tell you what you need to know about this one.
Hey, Charlie, you're up again.
Can you guys see what's on my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yours? Okay. So yeah, we're looking at implementing form-based out west. So we just got done talking about the residential component. So let's talk about the commercial/residential component. And that's mostly in the village centers. The general plan talks a bit about creating village centers. And as I re-looked at the general plan, it talks about focusing on the 12th Street and 1800 South corridor first before you start looking at commercial rezones anywhere else. And so we picked West Weber Village. This presentation is going to be a little bit funner because it's got more pictures, as is the, I don't know, what is it, 60 or 80 page ordinance. It's only that because 40 or 50 of those are pictures. So hopefully that was a little more fun to read than the other one. As you look at the list here, street types and amenities, the whole point of form base is you start regulating based off of street design as opposed to uses. That doesn't mean that we're not regulating off of uses. We created a hybrid where we're doing both regulation on uses, well, very specific regulation on uses like the rest of our zoning code does, but then also focusing in on those street design elements. Street design is essentially the box that is the street, the sidewalk, any kind of trees or whatever, and then the buildings, and then you know, a false ceiling above. That's the box that we're looking at, and making sure the buildings look good, making sure the street improvements look good. What happens behind the wall of the building isn't for anyone else to be concerned about at the street level. That's kind of the idea behind form-based. Form-based relies on a street regulating map. Street regulating plan map. And so this is the one that we've worked on a little bit here. So you can see 4,700 and 900, that's kind of the center of the mixed use commercial. Mixed use commercial being street oriented commercial retail operations with residential and other types of commercial uses above and behind. And then also using the 12th Street corridor as the main arterial thoroughfare, limited access arterial, with the magenta colors being vehicle-oriented commercial opportunities. One of the original versions that you saw had the entire 12th Street shown as magenta, and as we started thinking about limited access highways, we wanted to kind of address those a little bit different. So limited access, arterials, and collector streets, just like we discussed in our last conversation. And so when we're looking at 12th, we don't want to show 12th as that vehicle-oriented commercial street because it's not, it's a highway and there should be limited access. So how would we get commercial operations in here otherwise? Well, we make sure that we've got other streets that can show as designation. So anything that happens in this corridor in here would be vehicle-oriented commercial or need to comply with vehicle-oriented commercial. But just as a reminder, each color kind of builds on the color shade before it. So just starting with a darker orange, that's multifamily residential. You can do street-oriented commercial in multifamily residential, but you're not required to do it. Where you go to the red, that's mixed-use commercial, you are required to do street-oriented commercial, and you could do multifamily above it. And then the magenta being vehicle-oriented commercial, which is all the same as the mixed-use commercial, but it also allows a lot more vehicle-oriented uses, bigger boxes, bigger box stores, that kind of thing, gas stations and all that. And then government and institutional, which we only see a couple of lines on the map for that, and that's one buffering the elementary school here and one buffering the potential future junior high school here. And that allows for those government and institutional buildings to go in. And then working our way backwards from dark orange, we get the lighter version of orange, and then we do it just kind of, we do a transect outwards, and those transects being less density as you move outwards. That lighter version of orange is small lot residential, allowing up to 4 residences on it. You'll see townhomes, you'll see fourplexes, that kind of thing in there. And then the next version out is medium lot residential. We're talking about 8,000 square foot lots in there, single family residential. And then everything else that radiates outward is single family residential. The yellow being, we actually did 12.5 in the yellow. So if you, hopefully you saw that in your packet, it's 12,500 square foot lot area. And then the kind of that the dark green color is rural residential, which would be the 1 acre. Just to zoom in, just kind of on that more commercialized, higher density area. One thing to emphasize from the general plan is if we are providing for these areas, providing places for the market to go, we build the tax base in an area that is appropriate, that can support rural residential in other locations. And so we're not talking about necessarily making sure everything's high density in the Western Weaver area. We are just making sure that the rest of the residential density that's going on out there can actually be supported and have financial solvency as the village grows up, I guess, as the community grows up. We're adding in a street type. This is the typical 3-lane village cross section that just puts a center turn lane in the middle of the road. Otherwise, this would be the typical 2-lane village cross section. So along 900 South, I think you would probably see this village cross section, and along 4700 West, you'll probably see this version. Just looking at these street cross sections, these are the important factors that go in. So when we're looking at this, we're not talking about the residential lots. We're talking about multifamily and above, right? Multifamily, mixed use, commercial, vehicle to commercial. 14-foot wide sidewalks, tree lanes, bike lanes that are above grade, so above the street level, bumper buffer for parking, and then street parking and travel lane here. Why so much space? We've had a few people ask that question. Well, you want activity on your street. There's this balance in urban planning between making sure your street's not so wide that the two sides can't have a relationship with each other. Because you're here and you look across the street and you see something you like, you want to just bounce across the street and go take care of it or go do it or whatever you're gonna do. And so making sure that you've got limited distance there, but also enough distance that you can get all of your different modes of transportation in there. A lot of different flexibility for future modes of transportation, which we don't know, where that's going to go. Maybe everything will be autonomous and we won't need to have roads. We'll be flying. We'll see. And then also street activities, 14-foot wide sidewalks so that you could actually do street shopping as well as move through your community. Adding in some new graphics. So I'm showing this one just because this is an example of a type of intersection that we would expect out of the village area. The intersection itself is raised to the level of the sidewalk. So when you've got someone in a wheelchair or even pedestrians, they're not transitioning from where the pedestrians go to where the cars go. They're transitioning from where the pedestrians go to where the pedestrians go. And the car is taking the step up. And it's just a gentle ramp up. And we worked with our roads guys to find out exactly what that slope is, but treating that ramp up right after the stop line right here, treating that with a different pavement treatment, color, whatever it may be, and then marking bike lanes and pedestrian crossings appropriately is going to help really bring eyes on for pedestrians in that area. I wouldn't expect the intersection of 12th Street and 47 to necessarily have this kind of treatment unless UDOT's willing to play with us, but play in the sandbox with us. But 9th and 4700, even though that is UDOT, we would work very hard to try and get UDOT to see the benefit of that. This is all crosshatched here because these are bulb outs, and this is just one of the graphics that I've added into the code to illustrate what a bulb out is. It just shows to a driver as you're driving down the road that something different is happening. constricts that roadway. You naturally let off the gas as you're doing so, as you come to a stop sign or an intersection or maybe. One of the primary concerns our engineers had is, wow, that's tight for a semi to turn on. It's not. Actually, that's a really wide radius, and we did that on purpose so that semis can turn. But the painting or the ground treatment sure makes it look like it's a tight curve. And so you'll be able to get a semi in and around pretty efficiently. It's not designed for semis to go fast around those corners, but it is designed to get them. Architectural standards. So what do those building facades look like? And you guys have opted to go with a style that's already been adopted for the Newtown Eden area, which is agrarian. And so these are kind of the design or the types of buildings that you might get out of the design standards that are there. We're not heavy on the design standards. We may find buildings coming in where that teach us our lesson and we get heavy on design standards after, but hopefully just the simplicity of the design standards we have mixed with the private market, hopefully the desire for whatever's going into that building to succeed will provide a decent enough design of those buildings that can provide that street level vibrancy for a resilient community. The new version of the form base that you guys are looking at has new pathway connectivity requirements, and a lot of this comes right out of the Western Weaver General Plan. Don't tell the Ogden Valley I said that, because we're proposing this for the Ogden Valley as well, and they've got the same kinds of pedestrian-oriented interests. They just aren't going to want to go with it if they hear it was proposed in the Western Weaver General Plan first. So street adjacent pathways, and then mid-block pathways. So these are more through those residential areas. If it's in a commercial area, you have to have a mid-block alley or access way, which would also double as a pedestrian route. We provided two alternatives, so you don't have to do the 30 feet wide. You can go down to 15 under certain circumstances. You have to have either a low fence adjacent or a fence that has openings every once in a while. Restricts a little bit of privacy, but it still allows you to divide your backyard from that area, while also keeping your eyes on the pathway area, so you don't have a lot of nefarious things going on. That's the form-based code in a nutshell. There's a lot more details in there, but you guys are pretty familiar with it. We've gone through it 3 different work sessions, so hopefully you're comfortable with what's there. You're just looking at compatibility with your general plan and whether it's the right time to be making these considerations. And then same thing, I gave you guys some model motions to think through if you wanted to use or use one of your own. Any questions for me?
Commissioners, anything for Charlie?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. With that, I'll entertain a motion to open a public hearing on this item.
Motion to open public hearing.
We got a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Okay, we are now in a public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this item?
Roger Heslop, 1657 South, 4700 West, Ogden. My question is one for information. In your packet, you talked about transferable developmental rights. It says in Western Weaver, a 1-to-3 transfer bonus is being proposed for any landowner who moves residential rights from agriculture to property in the form-based zone. My question is, the 1-to-3 bonus, is that in favor of the farmer, or is that in favor of the developer or those who are involved in developing the form-based village? Realizing that the original people out there are, if they had any idea what was being developed and being proposed tonight, the majority of the community would be up in arms, because this goes completely against the rural agriculture concept that they have out there. And in their mind, this is not what they're asking for or if they want or to have involved. Realizing that as development grows, we need this kind of activity and this kind of, proposal. But my question was just, who does it favor?
Pat Burns, 1407 North Mountain Road. Just same question or comment that Roger had, except for what I think about TDRs is they're the most important tool you can use to keep it rural, to put the density where it needs to be. So I think it's brilliant for a TDR to be upsized, and Charlie can answer that. I think it does go in favor of the farmer. Developers has to pay more money, but I don't know if Charlie can answer that. But TDRs are brilliant in my opinion. They are the best thing for putting the growth exactly where it needs to go to keep it rural. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
We got a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that passes. We're out of public hearing. Okay, Charlie, can you answer the question regarding TDRs, please?
I can, and it's not going to be as direct of an answer as I think Mr. Hessel would prefer. One of the things we're not doing in TDRs is we're not setting the market, we're not creating the rate at which TDRs should financially benefit anyone. We're just saying it needs to happen if you're going to get extra density. And so if you're giving an incentive for a developer to move dwelling units off of the farm area and move them into the village area, you'll be tying developers and farmers a little more easily, those connections, you'll be making those connections a little more easily. Developers can have a lot more incentive to go and get that density. And so what we're finding, for example, in the Ogden Valley, the transfer's been there and in place for well over a year, if not two now. And not a whole lot happening. They've got 1-to-1 and they are unwilling to budge on that incentive. So in other words, the 1-to-1 is the developer goes, buys one development right from the farmer, and turns it into 3 development rights in the village area. And the logic behind that is that those 3 development rights in the village area, compared to the value of just subdividing a 1-acre property with a house on it, it's hard to justify a large home on a 1-acre property and flipping it for a condominium downtown. And so as far as values go, at least in Western Weber, giving the developer the incentive to get a little bit more density here, you'll make those connections a lot faster, and you'll see a lot more development rights coming off of those farmlands.
But essentially, it's where it's going 1 to 3, they're probably going to pay the 3 times for the one lot to make it, or they're not going to sell it, essentially. I mean,
honestly, so if we're looking at market demand, it's going to be a supply and demand kind of question, right? And right now we have zero supply because we don't have any mechanism to allow that supply to exist. As soon as as soon as farmers realize that developers are interested in buying their development rights, first place, if I were a developer, I would go is I would try and find someone who's going to sell me some development rights pretty inexpensive. I'd go to a farmer who I know wants to stay in business for a long period of time, and I'd offer him some money. And that farmer's going to say, well, I wasn't planning on selling my farm anyway. And so, sure, you want to give me $5,000 or $6,000 per lot, or that I could otherwise get, that'd be fine. I might go to Roger and say, hey, you got some land over in that riparian corridor that I know you're not going to be able to develop. How about we do some trading here, or something like that. The point being that the market rate is going to be set by whatever the landowners want to sell their development rights for. And if I were a landowner, there is a way to do this calculation. If I were a farmer, I would be looking at what is my return on investment in the productivity of my property for the next 5 years? That's your five-year horizon in your portfolio. What kind of profit can I turn here versus, well, what kind of return on investment can I get out of there, not just profit? Take that number and then subtract that from what kind of value can I get out of the property if I just subdivide it into 1 acre lots. The difference is what your TDR value is. And it's all going to come down to that farmer's motivation on whether or not they're choosing to retire that year or in 10 years from now. And so they'll start setting those rates. Now, at some point, once those rates get established and TDRs are moving, you're going to see the real estate market step in. And you'll have realtors marketing things based off of comparables. And you're just going to have appraisers going out and saying, well, we know this one, this one, and this one, and these particular kinds of locations that could yield this kind of development are going for this value. And so, farmer, you should be selling it at this value. And that's assuming everything stays fair and everyone's playing from the same playbook. What I mean by that is we're not just giving people free density for no reason.
Charlie, can I add something to your comment? I think we set on 3 because the idea is that if a farmer owned an acre of land that ended up being zoned for residential, they would be able to get 3 rights out of their 1 acre. So we were trying to make it fair to those farmers who may own land that was designated agricultural, and where we want to keep it agricultural, but they still can get the 3 development rights that their friend with agricultural property that was it's not zoned, but redefined in the general plan as residential. So I think the 1 to 3 came from that equivalency.
Yep. Accurate.
Okay, commissioners. Anything else?
One thing I would add, Mr. Hislop, is it's not in anybody's favor. Actually, it's in both yours' favor. If the developer figures he can get 3 more lots, he'll know how much he can pay. Then all you have to do is decide whether you want to accept that.
I think that's exactly it. To the comment that was made about, I wish more people were here. This is a big change, but this is in line with what come through the general plan. There's been a lot of thought, a lot of work put into this based on what come out of the general plan. There was members of the public that attended those meetings in our work sessions. There were developers that attended those meetings, which are also landowners in the area. So I agree it's a big change, but I hope it sets the area for the future, because right now, and especially with some of the subdivision applications we've seen come in the area, we're building a lot of homes and reserving nothing for sustainability when it comes to commercial and those type of options. So hopefully this helps guide that a little bit, I guess I would say, or maybe even incentivize some commercial to come into our area. But with that being said, I think there was I want to talk about a couple changes we found in here.
Yes, we looked at changing on page 10 of 62, the public recreation or community center, making it consistent with maybe not consistent with public park, but instead of not allowing it in multifamily residential and greater, but changing that to a conditional use so that we can put those community facilities in communities, residential communities. And knowing on page 56 of 62, the map of the 4700 area, there's a small park that is designated that we had previously considered to make larger. It's at about 5 acres now, and we considered 19 acres. And we'd like to propose to change that back to the 19-acre park that it was before. Is everyone still on board with that idea?
And take the roundabout out of 47 and 12th. Oh, I heard that conversation. Ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, with that, commissioners, anything else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make that motion. I recommend we forward a positive recommendation to the county commission for file number ZTA 2022-06, a county initiated application to amend the form-based zone and related amendments as provided in Exhibit A in our packet, but with the following additional edits and corrections. In section 104-22-3.070, I'd like to change the public recreation or community center uses for the multifamily residential, the single and small lot. They use small lot, medium lot, the medium, large lot, rural residential, estate lot, lot residential, and open space. Currently, they read not permitted, and we'd like to change them all to conditional uses. The second adjustment we propose is on page 56 of our packet, section 104-22-8.040, and that's 4700 area street regulation plan map. There is a park shown on this map that we'd like to increase to 19 acres so that it will go between 850 south and the canal and between 4600 and 4700 west. This is done with the findings that are listed in our packet, that the changes are supported by the Western Weaver General Plan. The proposal serves as an instrument for further implementation to further implement the vision, goals, and principles of the Western Weaver General Plan. The changes will enhance the general health, safety, and welfare of Western Weaver residents. And that's it. That's my motion, unless there are any adjustments.
I mean, we could say to take the roundabout out, but I think the state squashed that already. All right, I've got a motion. Do I got a second? Second. Got a motion and a second. Commissioner Klontz.
Aye.
Commissioner Neville.
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern.
Aye.
Commissioner Favero.
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That passes. Thank you, Charlie. Item number 4, public comments for items not on our agenda tonight. Anybody wish to speak about items not on our agenda? Oh, come on, Pat. There's not a. Not tonight. Remarks from the planning commissioners. Okay. Since Director Grover left, does planning staff have anything?
I just wanted to mention on that roundabout, we did meet with UDOT. They say that that intersection merits a traffic signal right now. And they don't want to yield to do anything different. So they're going to put a traffic signal in right there. They met with the county commissioners. The county commissioners favored the idea of the roundabout for the sake of the community, but they know right now that we don't have the difference in money to build it. And that's what UDOT would want, is just the county's contribution towards building that roundabout. It'd be a large roundabout because it's got to accommodate all that truck traffic. And so UDOT agreed that when the county is ready to build a roundabout, they'll pull out their signal and help contribute to the same amount towards the roundabout, even though they built the signalized intersection. My guess is that signal will never go away, because once it's there, I just don't see us going in. So we'll focus on roundabouts in other places.
Yeah. The signal will probably be in this fall.
Yep.
It's in
By the end of
design right
summer.
now.
Good.
You've seen some of the area. I love it.
Yeah,
Yep.
they don't solve every problem, that's for sure.
Nope.
It's
That's
not a
probably
place for
one
a
of those.
roundabout.
Yep, that's one of the intersections.
The whole dynamics of that intersection is going to change in about 2 years when that high school opens. So.
Thank you.
And at Black Pine, there was talk of that on 59. That's not going to be a roundabout there either, right?
It's not likely to be a roundabout. We are asking for the right of way to allow one if that is possible. We've already agreed with Black Pine roundabout in. Not likely.
Thank you guys for all the work on this. Liam, What do you got for us?
Nothing, thank you.
You're my man. Okay, we've got an item on here to adjourn to a work session. It's my favor. We've work sessioned a lot lately. I'd like to see this tabled to another night, but that's up to you guys.
I favor tabling as well because I put this on as a work session just in case you didn't pass one of the two items tonight. So I figured we can go in and have some discussion.
I was kind of wondering too, but okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Lots of seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Thank you.
What's that? Oh. I don't know what it says. I just didn't know, because there was enough reorganization. I didn't know if you'd want to just hold